Very early in my life, I learned that the most important is not what's happening, but how we perceive it. Since the beginning, when I started to do photography, the images was for me a way to tell a story about the thing that I was experienced personally, and also to try to share my emotions that I also experienced in such and such place of the city where I lived, in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. Marcel Proust taught me that the only way to communicate and to share what I was feeling with others is the use of the metaphor. Once I understood this, everything became so clear to me that was keep going. First I was using collages or photomontages as the Dada movement did, superposition of several negatives. It had always a narrative. My series, First Nomenclature of Science, had a narrative. I was telling a story about the life I've had in the Soviet Union, and also I was trying to write something myself, and for Nomenclature of Science I had written a small novel called Nomenclature of Science. When I had a group of photographs from my series City of Shadows, I immediately started to think about how may I create a story from it that may play an independent role from the photographs themselves. I did it by finally developing this approach to the collapse of the Soviet Union, and I made this pretty important work that comprised about 45 to 60 photographs in a kind of the labyrinth that I made with transparent, semi-transparent paper with the lamps above each photograph. The visitors had to start from one point and finish to another point. So they were reading my exhibition like you read the book. And I realized that I made a novel, somehow a photographical novel, from the city. It came when I found, by chance, White Nights of Dostoevsky, the Dostoevsky story that I didn't read since the 70s. And I was so hooked by, even though I knew this novel, that I decided to create a romantic series of images around it. I call it Black and White Magic of St. Petersburg. But how to translate magic? You can't just stay and keep going saying to the people, this is magic. They have to feel magic. So the metaphor of the magic was to create, by the way of the process called solarization, this kind of silver veil around the center, not in the center, that somehow dispersed everything that is around in the kind of smooth and humid atmosphere that corresponds of the atmosphere of the city of St. Petersburg. And it also makes the images more romantic. St. Petersburg was built as a Venice of the North. Originally, for example, on Vasilievsky Island, where I was born, there is no streets of Vasilievsky Island because there was no originally streets. It should be canals. The canals didn't work because St. Petersburg obviously is not Venice, and actually it's created just a nice environment to grow up mosquitoes. So Peter the Great decided to close all the canals and make just normal streets. St. Petersburg was connected to so many tragedies, revolutions, wars, this massive hunger during the collapse of the Soviet Union. And when 10 years later I arrived to Venice in 2001, 10 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I understood that I was always dreaming about Venice because it's definitely so happy place and people make love there. There is nothing that may upset you. except maybe mosquitoes again. So that was my idea. And I never did any sad photograph in Venice. It was always something joyful and happy. Havana is a time machine. So you don't need to invent it. Time machine exists for the people who were born in totalitarian country in Soviet Union. When I was trying to figure out what I will encounter in Havana, I would have never imagined. The first thing that pops up to me was the smell of the very old, very cheap gasoline that doesn't exist anymore, that Soviet cars was using. The smell of gasoline made me so happy, and it was coming from the Soviet car Moskvich that someone was trying to turn on, and it wasn't actually. So all these fumes of old gasoline was going up to the window of the bed and breakfast where I was staying. So when I went out and walked through old Havana, all this old building reminded me my walks through the courtyard when I was a kid. I didn't know how to translate my emotions when I was a kid with the camera. And now I knew how to do it. So I was basically redoing the work that I should have done in the early 70s by taking the pictures. I was redoing it in Havana when I already was an experienced artist. Well, New York is a place where I live, and it took for me about 10 years to print the first New York image, because New York is not, of course, not another St. Petersburg like Venice. It is not Soviet Union as Havana. New York is United States, and it's very specific part of United States, very different. When I understood a little bit the soul of the city, I was trying to translate it through the images, creating it more dense, more colorful, introducing different dynamics, different colors also that I never used before. So to tell it, to translate it now in the interview into the words, it's quite different, because I have to be a poet to somehow literally show you what the difference is. I'm trying to do it more dense, as the city is more dense, trying to translate this atmosphere of canyons when you walk, the canyons that they call avenue. When you walk, you are very small and the buildings are very high. So I also use more and more architecture that dominate not just the background, small background when the people dominate in the first plan, but making the architecture dominate the people in New York. So this is a huge difference. There is no life without mystery, otherwise life is boring. When you say mysterious, means that there is something hidden in the image, because everything is obvious, there is no mystery, right? Mysterious image means that image is complex, that there is a first level, the second level, and third level, and indefinite amounts of different levels that you have to read. And when you read the 32nd one, you forgot already the first one. And this endless readings of the same image a different way, you feel that you still don't know something about it. And this is what creating actually this feeling of mystery and magic inside of the image.